People have always been an integral part of food production and processing. In fact, it was people working in the packing houses of Chicago around the turn of the century who inspired Upton Sinclair to write the book The Jungle, which described the awful unsanitary working conditions at the time. The outcry from the public as a result of this book caused the Congress of the United States to pass the first meat inspection law, the Wiley Act. As time passed, it became evident that more regulations were needed to protect the nation's food supply. New laws were passed in 1938 and included regulations for food, drugs, and cosmetics. Sections 402A3 and 4 were particularly important to the food processors. Section 402A3 of the Act states a food is deemed to be adulterated if it contains, in whole or in part, of any filthy, putrid, or decomposed substance, or it is otherwise unfit for food. Section 402A4 considers food to be adulterated if it was prepared, packaged, or held under insanitary conditions whereby it may have been contaminated. These regulations were further clarified and defined with the writing of the Federal Good Manufacturing Practices Regulations during the 1960s. As our knowledge and understanding of food safety increases, so does the need for revising these guidelines. For this reason, the GMPs are periodically revised. This video will address the requirements of 21 CFR Subpart A 110.10, Personnel. Personnel, or human resources, is one of the most important resources for the operation of a food plant. Every individual in the organization, including management persons, maintenance, and production workers, have a responsibility to protect food from contamination. Each employee holds the trust of the consumer that the food they produce is safe and wholesome. The chief executive officer, or the president of the company, has the ultimate responsibility for developing plant policies and procedures to prevent food contamination by disease organisms, foreign materials, or as the result of actions by employees. The GMPs allow for the delegation of responsibilities to competent supervisory personnel for identifying sanitation failures, food contamination, and compliance with all procedures and policies. These supervisory persons should have appropriate education or experience or a combination thereof to provide a level of competency necessary for the production of clean, safe food. This training may be accomplished by academic degree, trade schools, or by seminars, correspondence courses, or other educational materials like those provided by AIB. All food handlers should receive appropriate training in food handling techniques and food protection principles. They should be informed of the dangers of poor personal hygiene and insanitary practices before starting to work and at regular intervals thereafter. Written policies shall be established to satisfy the GMP requirements. Plant management shall take all reasonable measures and precautions to assure that any person who by medical examination or by supervisory observation that is shown to have or appears to have an illness, open lesions, including boils, sores, or infected wounds, or any other abnormal source of microbial or viral contamination should be excluded from any operation where there is reasonable possibility of the contamination of food, food contact surfaces, or packaging materials until the condition has been corrected. All personnel should be instructed to report such health conditions to their supervisor. Written plant policies and practices should be established to assure that persons working in direct contact with food, food contact surfaces, or packaging materials conform to hygienic practices while on duty to the extent necessary to protect against possible contamination. Maintenance personnel should be included in this training to make them cognizant of the potential for contamination from tools, dirty hands, grease, and oils. The design of clothing worn in production areas is important. Items carried in shirt pockets and buttons are potential sources of foreign materials. Shirts should have gripper fasteners to prevent losing buttons and be pocketless to keep employees from carrying items in their shirt pockets that may fall out into the product. Clothing and shoes worn in processing areas, especially in microsensitive plants, should be under the control of management and not be worn outside the plant for other purposes. Footwear should be worn that can be maintained in a sanitary condition suitable for the operation. Sandals and open-toed shoes should not be permitted. Foot baths containing a sanitizing preparation are a useful tool to control the spread of foodborne organisms in microsensitive plants. Employees' hands may transport undesirable bacteria and other contaminants. Employees should thoroughly wash their hands prior to starting work, and at any other time the hands may have become contaminated. Instructions should be given on proper hand washing techniques. When processing procedures require, employees should sanitize their hands with an effective sanitizing preparation in a hand dip or wash with a USDA E2 rated hand cleaner sanitizer. Signs directing employees to wash their hands before returning to work should be posted in all toilet rooms, break rooms, and smoking areas. To reduce the potential for foreign materials and bacterial contamination, insecure jewelry and other items that cannot be effectively sanitized, such as finger rings with stones, earrings, necklaces, watches, and bobby pins, should not be allowed in processing areas. The only jewelry allowed is a plain wedding band. When gloves or pan holders are used to protect the hands from hot pans or other potential injuries, they should be appropriate for the intended use and be maintained in an intact, sanitary condition. Gloves worn to protect the product when food is manipulated by hand should be made of an impermeable material. These gloves should be protected from contamination during storage prior to use and at all times during use. They should be sanitized or discarded when there's a possibility they may have been contaminated. Hair in food will cause an immediate customer rejection of the food. In addition, hair may be a carrier of undesirable bacteria. Every effort should be made to prevent hair contamination by the use of effective hair restraints, such as properly worn hair nets, bonnets, and beard covers. Effective and properly worn means to contain all of the hair inside the net, bonnet, or beard cover. Clothing and other personal items such as purses, newspapers, cigarettes, or prescription medicines should be stored in the employee's locker or designated storage area and not be taken to the processing line or into areas where food is exposed or utensils and equipment are washed. Eating food from the line, eating or storing snacks, chewing gum, or using or storing tobacco in any form is prohibited in all areas where food is exposed or where equipment and utensils are washed. All eating, drinking, and tobacco use should be restricted to designated areas. Policies should be established as necessary to prevent possible food contamination from microorganisms or foreign materials, including, but not limited to, nail polish, lotions applied to the skin, chemicals, etc. Horseplay or pulling pranks may cause food contamination or personal injury. Horseplay should not be tolerated in the plant. Training programs should be established for all office personnel, visitors, and contractors that enter the plant to make them aware of plant policies and practices. The employee training program should make employees aware they have responsibilities other than their specific production assignment. It is the employee's responsibility to keep unscreened doors and windows closed. Employees should be encouraged to report any condition, such as improperly cleaned equipment, pest sightings, grease and oil leaks, peeling paint, unprotected lights, or any other condition that conceivably may cause food contamination. In today's modern societies, people's lives are touched by many unseen hands. This is especially true with the growing, harvesting, and storage of food crops, the processing of manufactured food products, food distribution, and the final preparation of food for consumption. Every person involved in the production, manufacturing, storage, and distribution of food has a moral and legal responsibility to the consumer. All have a liability to ensure that the food produced is safe. Beyond this, good employee practices are good business. Good business helps to ensure success and profits. Profits provide security for the plant operators and employees alike. Good employee practices are everyone's business.